In my last video, I spoke about how to strengthen Indian passport and uplift its global identity. But today we are going to discuss something deeper, an incident that exposed a major vulnerability in our system. A story that should concern every Indian citizen and policymakers. The story is about Nayara Energy versus Microsoft. A story that reveals how dependent we are on a foreign technology and how one decision taken in the foreign boardroom can make $1 billion Indian infrastructure brought to its knees. So what exactly happened with Nayara Energy? On 18 July 2025, European Union imposed significant sanctions on Russian energies. Now you must be wondering how it is related to India. Here's exactly where Nayara Energy comes into the picture. Nayara is an Indian company, but about 49% of its company stakes belongs to a Russian giant oil company by the name of Rosneft. Despite being an Indian business with Indian infrastructure, Indian customers, Nayara found itself tangled in a geopolitical game. Within days, specifically around 22nd July 2025, Microsoft revoked its services to Nayara Energy. In an overnight, Nayara lost its access to Microsoft Outlooks, emails, and several operating systems. It is important to note that Nayara Energy was not given any prior notice, no explanation, and no warnings. Their entire system came to a grinding halt. Nayara's Vadinar refinery, which refines about 400,000 barrels per day and has about 6,500 fuel outlets, all were impacted. Communications within the company broke down. Shipments were delayed, supply chains were disrupted, and all this because Microsoft, a giant tech company from the States, decided to hit the switch. It is important to note that Nayara had fully paid for those services. There was no pending subscription, no legal orders within India. This was purely a decision taken by Microsoft under Western geopolitical pressure. However, faced with a crisis, Nayara Energy didn't stay silent, and on 28 July 2025, Nayara moved to Delhi High Court and filed a legal petition against Microsoft. In their plea, Nayara argued that their suspension was arbitrary, illegal, and that Microsoft had no jurisdiction to disrupt an Indian operating legal business. Microsoft, perhaps realizing the seriousness of the issue, restored the services which they were initially offering to Nayara. And moving forward with this, Nayara eventually then took away their complaint. But friends, the damage was already done. For nearly a week, a major part of India's energy infrastructure was digitally paralyzed. So what do we learn from this? And why should all this thing matter to us? Let's reflect. Number one, there was no prior warning. Nayara Energy found about the suspension when they tried to log into their systems. Imagine a company handling India's critical infrastructure and their access to emails, data, and operations just get lost without prior notice. Number two, data lock-in. Even after services were being restored, Nayara had to temporarily switch their services to an Indian email-based provider known as rediff.com to maintain their communications, as they couldn't recover instantly their historical data. This is exactly what happens when a nation's business are at the mercy of foreign-controlled digital platforms. Number three, overreach of global tech giants. Remember, this wasn't a sanction by the government on Nayara. This was a unilateral action taken by Microsoft, a US-based corporation acting on foreign policy without Indian legal oversight. Just imagine if Microsoft can do this to Nayara. What's stopping them or any other Western company from doing the same to India's government, hospitals, banks, Indian military infrastructure? And as rightly said, friends, this is not just about Nayara Energy. It is about India's digital sovereignty. It's about the need to build an ecosystem where we are not vulnerable to the whims of the foreign infrastructure. If you believe India must secure its future, stay tuned, as in part 2, I am going to talk about why India must restore their talents from moving abroad, create its own digital stack, and stop this dependence once and for all.